Hey guys, Chris here with the Good Old Gamer. It's been years since AMD's dream of combining both CPU and GPU onto a single package has been realized. But aside from consoles, up until today, there hasn't been a single OEM out there that have really taken advantage of that particular feature set. Now, this is really exciting to me. I'm very interested to see how this all shakes out, and it may actually be the next wave in computing. Go ahead and stick around and let's check it out. Today we're going to be talking about AMD's new SoC custom designed for the new Chinese consoles coming out. Now this is a collaboration between AMD and Zhongshan Subor. Much like Microsoft and Sony, Zhongshan decided to go ahead and contract AMD to build them a custom CPU-GPU hybrid that they can use for their brand new small form factor PCs and their own gaming console lineup based off of x86 architecture. Now over here on Anandtech, they got some of the specs out here for us, and the custom CPU, APU, whatever you want to call it, SoC is probably the most apt word for it, is very similar to the Ryzen 5 2400G. We're talking about both 4-core, 8-thread CPUs based on the Zen architecture. The big difference is it's running at a lower clock speed of 3 GHz, and this is likely to keep it within power and thermal envelope that they want the consoles and small form factor PCs to be in, as compared to the 3.8 GHz on the 2400G. Now, the big difference is in the swing between CPU and GPU horsepower. We go ahead and see 24 compute units on the brand new SoC in comparison to only 11 on the 2400G. And this gives us more than double the stream processors. Now, the big reason why the 2400G, even at 11 compute units, is limited is when it comes to the RAM. And this is the next most interesting part about this, is the SoC will actually take advantage of 8 GB of GDDR5. Very much the same thing that the PS4 Pro has or the PS4 base. So this is going to allow for much more bandwidth than system DRAM allows for. And we got the final details on the memory running at 256 gigabytes per second. So this is very clear that this is going to be running on a 256-bit memory bus here. So with 24 CUs at 1.3 gigahertz, coming in at about 4 teraflops on a 256-bit memory bus with a total system memory of 8 gigabytes of GDDR5. This basically is the exact same horsepower that we see on the PlayStation 4 Pro. Except the big difference is 4 cores, 8 threads of Zen architecture, horsepower at 3 gigahertz. Now, if these specs seem a little bit familiar to you, that might be because Intel actually did something very similar with their Kaby Lake G CPUs. Now, this isn't a complete SoC. You have the CPU over here, which has its own integrated GPU, which is funny. And then you have your Vega GPU right here with HBM. Now, these are linked together by an EMIB, and they're not, it's one package, but it's not all one SoC. It's not all linked together. Now, one of the most interesting things about this new SoC is the fact that it is using GDDR5 instead of HBM. This is the first Vega GPU to be using GDDR5, which is something that I mentioned in this video right here, that at any time, if AMD wanted to, they could put GDDR with Vega. So this is now confirmed. Just want to point that out real quick. But in the real world, the reason why this is more important is the fact that GDDR5 is much less expensive. This means that the console will be much cheaper than if they went with something like HBM. Now, we'll go ahead and talk a little bit more about the specs when I give you my thoughts on this, but let's check out the looks on this thing. From everything that we can see here, if you measure out the USB port here, this thing's about the same size as a PS4 Pro, and I actually kind of like the design. This is very different, something that I think would look really cool underneath a television set in my TV cabinet. And that's really where they're shooting for this type of product. This is a very awesome looking HTPC, or simply just a console that you can use in your living room, and it's not going to look out of place. It's not going to be weird and bulky. In comparison to like a standard ATX or micro ATX HTPC case, The Subor is going to be much, much smaller. And really the big thing that I think it has going for it is its power profile. Now, obviously with these specs, it's not going to be drawing a ton of power and it's not going to be pumping out a ton of heat. That's the reason why they only went with the 3 gigahertz. And inside of a TV cabinet, you only have so much airflow. So restricting the amount of power that this thing consumes and the amount of heat that it produces is a very, very smart way to go. Now, let's take a quick look at the PCB here. Now, taking a quick look at the PCB, this is once again over from Anandtech. We can see that it's a single SoC. There's nothing branched off like on the Intel chips. So you have all of your GDDR memory floating around the edge. This looks just like a console, one of the APUs on there. You do have your CPU, GPU combination here, but you can see that you have an M.2 slot as well as a SATA slot for expansion. And this, I think, is going to be really, really cool, especially with something like Store MI. And I'll talk about that here in just a second. Now let's round out the new spec information that we got from the newer article. So obviously we already knew everything about the GPU. We now know the memory frequency, so that's really important. And option 1 comes with Windows 10. Console mode comes with Windows 10. Z Plus custom interface. I'm figuring that's probably something similar to what Dell did with their Alienware alphas. Low power mode supports 30 watt background download power, so obviously low power modes. This is something that pretty much all PCs have. Ultra mute mode, only 33 decibels at full horsepower. That is pretty damn impressive. That means the power profile on this thing is amazingly good. I'm kind of interested in this customizable appearance thing. Maybe they're just talking about the LED. Maybe it's an RGB on that front strip. I'd probably just turn it off as I think that would be distracting. But this I really wanted to be 100% sure on. So it does have wireless AC and Bluetooth built in. I mean, it would make sense to have it, but if it didn't, that would be a huge omission. Now, it looks like that they're going to go ahead and stick in a 128 gigabyte M.2 on these things. I really hope that they think about selling just a bare bones without this, so this way we can add our own storage solution in there, and then an optional 1 terabyte hard drive. More than likely, this is going to be a 2.5 inch considering the size of the system. Full HDMI 2.0 support. There's nothing really crazy here. I was actually kind of hoping for HDMI 2.1, but knowing AMD, they may just be able to update that through software. Not really sure yet. And then the system has 4 USB 3 ports and 2 USB 2 ports, which for a console, that's actually a lot of ports. For a PC, that's probably standard, if not a little bit light. But that should be enough ports for just about anybody in their living room. Looking at the back of the system, I mean, this thing looks really cool. The other thing to note, it looks like it has a built-in regular power supply. That's pretty neat. It doesn't have the external brick, so this would be just like the current gen consoles, the Xbox One X, the S, or the PlayStation 4s. So you don't have that annoying brick following you around, which means that this thing would be very portable and easy to transport. So that's great. That's one of the things that I was a little bit concerned about, and now that I see this picture, I am a little bit more relieved. All right, so if you can't tell by the tone of my voice, I'm really excited by this product. This is something that I've been wanting OEMs to do for a long time, to take advantage of the custom chip design that AMD allows for. Build what you want to fit cooler, smaller profiles, and build systems that we can't buy as consumers. Realistically, an OEM out there, to all the OEMs out there, the only way somebody like me, or probably anybody watching this video, are going to buy your product is if we cannot build it ourselves. If we can't source the parts, if it's something that has to be integrated together by, you know, everything soldered onto a motherboard, something that I can't do, that's the only way that we're going to buy products from you. So these guys are actually really, really smart with this product. I keep looking at it because I think it looks really cool. I just can't wait to get my hands on one of these if they're able to come out of China. Now, that's one of the things we don't really know. We don't know anything about availability. They're going to be selling in China here later on this month, but we do know that there's a lot of importers of Chinese goods here in the United States, and I'm sure that they'll be on eBay within a couple of months. Pricing, that's something I'll talk about here in a sec, but I want to talk more about the specs. So a 4-core, 8-thread Ryzen CPU at 3 gigahertz isn't anything super crazy. But if you think about it from the perspective of a 1080p 60 gamer, somebody in their living room that wants to play the latest and greatest PC games at 1080p 60, you really probably don't need any more than that. Unless it's a horribly optimized game, something like PUBG maybe, but that's an outlier. The vast majority of games are going to run perfectly fine on that. Digital Foundry actually did a video on this product, as well as comparing Ryzen to the consoles, 4-core 8-thread Ryzen, and they found that it's more powerful than what the consoles have by a good margin, and can pretty much run the most CPU demanding games on consoles at 60 frames per second. So if you want to check out their video is pretty good as well. And Rich over there is super excited to test one of these out as well. Now, as far as the GPU performance goes, there's a way to kind of figure out what performance level we're talking about here. Taking a look at the RX 560, we can see that we're running 16 compute units, and then the RX 570 is running 32. So the new Subor fits right in between. It's right in between these two performance-wise. Now, the RX 570 competes very well with the GTX 1060 3GB, and the RX 560 competes very well with the GTX 1050. So the only GPU from either manufacturer right in between is the 1050 Ti. So more than likely, that's around the performance level we can expect out of this. Maybe a little bit faster, maybe a little bit slower, but realistically, this is also using a Vega core versus Polaris, and more than likely, there's a few tricks up Vega's sleeve as drivers continue to improve, and of course, HBCC, but we'll talk about that in a sec. As far as gaming performance goes, I would go into this expecting 1050 Ti level performance and possibly a little bit more. Now, back onto the HBCC, I think that's going to be super important here because the system, this is the total system memory. This is between the operating system, the games, the video RAM. It's just like a console. Now, that's the big thing that Vega has that can make 8 GB of RAM more palatable on a PC platform. Now, 8 GB is just fine for something like the PS4 Pro because the developers can pick and choose how much memory they want to allocate, even scene by scene. Now, on PC, that's probably not going to happen. We're not going to get that level of optimization, and that's where the HBCC controller of Vega will really come into play. If you remember before Vega launched, AMD simulated HBCC working in action. They limited the VRAM on an RX Vega CPU, or GPU rather, to 2 GB and ran Deus Ex Mankind Divided, and compared it next to a system running with the full 8 GB. And the performance-wise, you didn't really notice too much of a difference because the high bandwidth memory controller really came into play and did what it needed to do. When the GPU memory becomes completely taxed, it goes into system memory, and if there's not enough system memory, it will then go to storage. And that's where I think that this M.2 drive is really going to be critical, and probably the reason why, no matter what, Subor wants to ship these with all their systems. Now, unlike traditional storage or even SATA SSDs, M.2s are pretty damn fast. They're nowhere near as fast as actual RAM or GDDR5 memory. Of course not. You're not getting 250 gigabytes per second transfer rates off of an M.2, but it is significantly faster than any other mass storage solution out there. So having that is going to be really critical in really memory demanding games and situations. But you also have to remember, this is going for console-like experience. So I wouldn't expect many people to be running every game on Ultra, probably comparable to PlayStation and Xbox, quality levels. Probably more like PS4 Pro, considering this has the exact same amount of memory to it. So maybe a mix between medium and high for most newer, more demanding titles. But of course, older games, it will be able to max out absolutely no problem. But if you do happen to accidentally overtax everything, having that M.2 will be super helpful. Now, we don't know what chipset that this system is actually going to be using. I'm hoping it's B350 or B450, actually. If it's using a 4 series chip, you can actually use AMD's Store MI technology and get another advantage over consoles. Now, if you don't know what Store MI is, I recommend you check out Jim's video over at Adored TV. He did a very in-depth review of Store MI when the X470s came out. So that brings me to my next point. How much is this thing going to cost? I have no idea. Realistically speaking, anywhere between the $399 and $499 price point here in the United States, it would be a very compelling product. Because if you think about it, a Ryzen 5 2200G by itself is $160, add another $100 for 8 gigabytes of RAM, and you're not getting anywhere near the performance. You're getting a superior CPU because this has higher clock speeds, but you're getting less than half the graphics processor, and you don't even have a motherboard yet. So even if you get a $50 motherboard and a $20 case and a $20 power supply, you're still going to come out behind if they can price the Subor properly. One of these guys at $399 or $499 here in the United States would sell like hotcakes. As honestly, that would be the best solution for your couch gamers out there, and even just new gamers into the PC market that just don't feel like building a PC. You just buy the box. It's got enough horsepower that it's going to play any of the current generation games absolutely fine. Sure, it might need to be upgraded in the future, and you don't have the expandability to upgrade it like a standard PC. But just like a console, I'm sure there'll be another one here in the near future. Now, this brings me to my last point, and that is, why did it take a Chinese company that I've never heard of to do this? I mean, this has been available for companies to go ahead and contract AMD to build them custom SoCs forever. Aside from Microsoft and Sony, nobody thought, hey, let's build a low power consuming, low heat producing, mega gaming SoC. I keep forgetting what to call it, APU, CPU, whatever. But SoC that only we sell, and that everybody in this large market of people that want to play PC games on the couch would definitely like to buy, and we can even probably steal some console gamers. Now, I thought that they were going to wise up with the Steam boxes a few years ago once those came out. I figured people would be like, hey, maybe we should build something custom and make it good. But no, they wanted to take existing parts and just cram them into smaller profiles. Unfortunately, it doesn't really work out that great. There are some really cool tiny cases out there, but there's a lot of drawbacks to that. And typically, the parts needed for that are extremely expensive. People don't want to put up with all that crap. Something like this would make a lot more sense. You just go ahead, you buy it, you throw it underneath your TV, and you don't worry about it. There's no extra configuring or anything like that. It's all there. Everything's in one box, and you get that simplicity factor, but you also get the extreme library from the PC side. You can throw Linux on it. You can do whatever the hell you want with something like this. And I think that's really awesome. I'm super excited to go ahead and test one of these things out if they ever make it this way across the ocean. I really hope they do, and I really hope other companies out there take note and expand upon this. Once AMD starts shipping 7nm products, I expect us to see probably double this. Probably 8 cores, 16 threads, 48 compute units, or maybe even 6 cores, 12 threads, and maybe something like 64 compute units in the future. Now, that might still be a year or two away, but this is the baseline. This is the starting point, and this is pretty damn good. Now, like I said, in the near future, we could see double this with no problems. And that's really what's got me excited, is the fact that we can see much more powerful SoCs like this in the near future. It all comes down to the OEMs out there taking advantage of this opportunity. And I hope that between this product and between Intel's Kaby Lake G, I hope they realize that, hey, we should probably step up our game. Otherwise, nobody in this entire segment of the PC market are ever going to really buy anything from us, except for maybe a laptop. And I guess that's probably my final point. The other cool thing, I keep thinking of stuff because there's so many cool things you can do with this, is the fact that this type of technology would also go great in laptops. Basically the same thing as the Kaby Lake G. It takes up less space, and without the HBM, that reduces cost. And obviously, it's a pretty low power unit there, so it should work very well in laptops. So something like this should also make its way into laptops, more affordable laptops. I really want to see a $499 or cheaper laptop with this inside of it. Maybe $599 at the most, but the $499 and lower laptop market really needs something that can game. It doesn't need to be the best. Like this thing right here is not the best, but it's good enough. And I think that this thing is literally the definition of good enough. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Are you excited? Do you like seeing new technology like this? Or it's not so much new technology, but technology being rewrapped and shaped in a different form factor than we've ever seen before. Something that we just don't have right now. Like I said, Kaby Lake G is the only thing that would be considered close to this, but nobody's using that, and I don't really know why. But I think that something like this could really catch on, especially with the GDDR5, because it's more affordable, and that's a market I think that we could really get behind. But let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. And if you like this kind of video, please hit that like button, please subscribe, please share with friends, that really helps me out. If you really want to help support the channel, consider becoming a patron over on Patreon. I really want to get one of these bad boys on hand, and I'm going to need some help getting there. Now, we are up to 21 patrons, and I want to thank each and every one of you guys for helping support the channel. I went ahead and put out an August pickups picture there with all the parts that I picked up using the funds that you guys have helped me get, and you guys know the types of videos that we're going to be doing with those. But like I said, something like the Subor would be really, really awesome. The goal is to get us up to 100 patrons. Once we reach that particular point, I can guarantee that we can do monthly benchmark videos on really cool tech like this. Well, alrighty guys, that's all I have for you today, and I will catch you guys in the next video.